And we're live. Yes, it's actually working this time. Hey folks, as you can see, new tech, new frames, using BeLive today, not StreamYard. And we'll see how we go with the new tech. But today, I have dubbed this Connect the Dots. Why? Because all I seem to be doing with so many businesses is helping them connect the dots with the things that they need to be doing. Last week we talked in and around some of the digital marketing stuff, what we need to do in regards to be able to manage and measure those different stages of the pipeline, cost per click, those clicks to leads, those leads to appointments, all those sorts of things. And today we're going to take that one step further. And I'm going to go through some of the things that I've done with our sales team and sales teams with organizations that I work with around pipeline management and KPIs, metrics that we should be tracking, not only to make sure that we close more deals, that's the outcome that we really all want, but it's actually about empowering your people and yourself, if you're running the sales, to take more action. And yep, imperfect action beats procrastination all the time. So what we're going to talk about today is that whole pipeline management. If you're in business, you're in sales. And if you're in sales, your job is to make sure that everyone stays in business. I'm not a big fan of the old always be selling or always be closing analogy. But what we do need to know is we need to have real clarity around what activity we're taking, the sort of activity that actually breeds results, and what that activity is worth to us. Because when we are out there looking for new business, when we're out there trying to close deals, there is nothing more frustrating, nothing more debilitating and just soul destroying than the countless no's that we get. And it's those sorts of things that crush the soul of most salespeople, even more so for business owners that have to sell, that they're not natural salespeople. So by putting some structure in and around the actions that you need to be taking, and by segmenting it out into manageable chunks around the activity that you're taking, makes a real massive difference, not only in the results that you get, but the motivation that you've got to keep on taking that action. So when it all comes down to it, there are some real key things that you need to be doing. And if you're doing those things, you should be measuring them. And I'm going to run through them. And I'm going to show you shortly just another simple tool that I put together to help track and manage each of those things, to put a value on each of those phases of the sales process. Even those ones that get you the no's have value, right? It's the old Thomas Edison theory. It's always one step closer to the yes, and you need to be taking all of those actions. And when you put these measurements in place and you've got a team, what you'll find is that different people have different strengths in different areas. So you've got different levers that you can pull with each individual person to help get that same or better result. And what do I mean by that? If we think about that natural deal flow, and I'm going to use a sales process here, and traditional sales, including cold calling or prospecting calls. You've got to make those calls to start off with. Every single one of those calls, you're going to get hang-ups. You're going to get no answer. You're going to get somebody that you're going to get stuck with the gatekeeper. And then you're going to, if you're any good, you're actually going to be making follow-up calls to try and get in front of that person that you need to speak to. From there, you'll get that discovery meeting, talk through the challenges that they're facing, highlight the areas that you can help with, and then you'll either For some businesses, you'll be able to close it there and then on the spot. But for most, it's a matter of, okay, going away, I'm going to come back to you with some ideas, maybe even a proposal, and you have a second meeting where you should be having a second meeting, even if it is delivering the proposal itself in person. Your close rates will go up much greater if you do that in person, whether that's over Zoom and you share the proposal with them over Zoom and you can talk through, or ideally face-to-face. So, how many of those quotes, how many of those meetings are turning into second meetings? How many of those follow-up meetings are turning into quotes or proposals? How many of those quotes or proposals are you actually closing? And every person in your organization that's got a sales focus will have strengths in different areas. Some people love smashing out the phone calls and they can get those discovery meetings, but they just don't seem to be able to transition and get those other follow-up meetings. And is that because the people that they're meeting with aren't resonating with them? Are they pushing too hard in those discovery meetings and trying to prematurely pitch and trying to sell too much too hard too early, and people losing complete resonance with them? Are they getting those second meetings and being able to get that quote out, but they're just not closing the deal? So is that challenge that they've got actually, it's not building resonance, it's not asking great questions, it's not putting the proposal together, it's asking for the business. So there are all sorts of levers that you can pull when you're working with your teams, and everybody has got different strengths in different areas. And I'm going to show you this spreadsheet, or this worksheet that I've got that I duplicate, replicate, and integrate into other businesses. And I'll also show you really, really simply how you can use some free CRMs like HubSpot to set up those sorts of deal flows that you can actually track it in there and track that activity. So here we have a deal flow, and I'm going to just remove myself a little bit here so that you guys can see what we've got in this personal activity metrics template. And this is very, very, very simple, and it's tracking salespeople over the course of a year, quarterly performance meetings. I highly recommend that you have these quarterly performance meetings. If you don't have those quarterly performance meetings, then there are challenges that you will get around accountability in the business. So anyway, I am a massive believer, and it's not hard when you get systems and structure in place, of measuring as much as you possibly can. If you have people in sales roles in your organization, they need to be recording all of their activity, those prospecting calls, the follow-up calls, the meetings, everything. And half-decent salespeople will also be making a lot of really, really good notes in and around those things. But anyway, so what we've got here, and this is real examples of sales team that I work with. So we've got BB, we've got the first person here. Quarter one, they made, and this will show you as well the difference in regards to how those metrics play out with the individuals. So in quarter one, they made 91 new calls, and by a new call, I mean it is a completely new prospect. They have not had any dealings with that business before. It's just a business that they have identified, and they have tried to make contact with them. Then we have what we call a BD call, and those BD calls are, well, I got stuck at the gatekeeper, but I'm calling back. I've got to try and get hold of that right person. So they've made in quarter one, they've made 202, 403, 133, 160 in those different quarters. Once they've actually spoken to that person, they might not necessarily get that meeting straight away, and may need to speak to that decision maker or that appropriate person a number of times before they get that meeting. So they've then followed up that individual, or multiple individuals, 17 times over the course of Q1, 55 over the course of Q2, to get those 45 meetings that they had in Q1 last year. So it's taken them a total of 310 calls between completely new prospects, following up those prospects that they haven't been able to get hold of, and then speaking to the individuals within those businesses that are the decision makers that they want to speak to, an additional 17 follow-ups to get those 45 meetings that quarter. From those 45 meetings, they have then had 15 follow-up meetings. So over the course of that quarter, they had 60 meetings in total, which translated into 5 deals. At that point, they had 28 active clients. Their total monthly revenue that they managed was X. The value of those 5 deals was $37,000 in that quarter. In this quarter here, you'll see it's quite different. It is $16,780. Managing all of these metrics and being able to do it is really, really important, because I'll skip all of this other stuff, right? But when it comes down to it, when we put in all of this data here, we can spit out some really, really interesting stuff. Let's put dollar signs on that. So their average client value that they signed that quarter was only $541. This is management, all right? 3,336, 1,324. You can see the variance in regards to the quality of the clients or the quality of their deals. Average deal values, there we go. So really, really simple. So this quarter, they've probably done a whole bunch of upselling to existing clients. Then what we've got is because we know how many meetings they've had, how many calls they've had, the ratios are self-evident. So their meeting to sale ratio is 12. So they have to have 12 meetings to get a sale, whether that's new, whether it's BD, whether it's rep. Follow-up meeting to sale ratio, they need to have 3. So they are closing 1 in 3 of their sales close meetings or their follow-up meetings. So they've already had the discovery, they're coming back and they're delivering that presentation. They are closing 3 out of 12. Or 1 in 3, every third meeting they're closing. New meeting to sale ratio, they have to have 9 new meetings to get a sale. So for every 9 discovery meetings that they have, 1 of those is going to translate into a sale. They need to, in this quarter here, they need to pick up the phone and prospect a completely new business 18 times for every sale. So I've now got a metric that I can manage because I'm measuring it. And I've also got some incentivization here as a salesperson or as a manager to drive that activity. Is every time I pick up that phone and I'm calling that new business, I am 1 step closer to that 18th call that I need to make, that 18th new prospect, because I know on average for every 18 new businesses I reach out to, I close a deal. So why wouldn't you pick up the phone 1 more time, and then 1 more time again, and then 1 more time again? If I can make those 18 new calls this week or this day, the numbers tell me I'm going to end up translating or transferring those, 1 of them, into a sale. For every new call that I make, right, 1 in 2 of those, every second one that I speak to ends up, actually finally end up speaking to, ends up turning into a deal. It is that simple. Every 7 calls that I make, I'm going to get a meeting out of it. And because I know the deal values, and because I know what it all translates into the sales, I can actually put a value on every single phone call that I make. So for every single new prospect that I make, if I can put a dollar figure on it, whether I get that meeting or not, whether I get that sale or not, that new business, that new call that I'm making, wait, let's get that back. That new call that I'm making, whether they hang up on me or not, this particular quarter here was worth $137 in the back pocket for the organization for every single phone call that I made to a new prospect. Every single new meeting that I had is worth $400. whether I close that deal or not. And when you get that psychology behind it, when you can put a monetary value on each of those meetings, whether you close the deal or not, it just makes that so much easier to deal with the rejection, which for most salespeople and business owners that are in selling, having that clarity in regards to the activity and what it translates to in regards to revenue makes it so much more of an easier process to deal with. But it also means that we've got all of those levers that we can play with. So when we look forward, that's looking backwards. And when we look forwards, and these particular individuals have got $5,000 a month that they need to grow their books, their revenue, and with a stretch goal of $6,000 of growth, revenue growth each month. So we know that based on their deal close ratios, this particular salesperson needs 2.5 with the average deal value over their last quarter. They need to make 2.5 deals a month, right? Which means they need to pick up the phone 55 times over the quarter over the month to make that. They need to have 17 new meetings and 9.5 follow-up meetings over the course of that month. If I just want to make my target and I don't want to overachieve, then we're as simple as I just need to make 2.1 deals in that month. I just need to make 46 phone calls over the course of that period. It is a really, really simple process for us to follow. Now, what I'm going to show you now is that comparison to show you that individual people perform differently in different areas in regards to that sales process. So we'll go from BB to JM. And if you see, remember here, right, let's look at Q4. We had 134 new calls, 166 BD calls, and 50 follow-up calls. We go to JM. We've got 178 new calls, 119 BD calls, and 129 follow-up calls. So, significantly more follow-up calls, quite a number, and a total of 426 versus 344 calls. And the volume of deals over the period, we've got 21 for BB, and we've got 31 for JM, right? And we have a look at the value per activity. We've got different close ratios here. So the meeting to sale ratio for JM is 11. The meeting to sale ratio for BB is 12. But we go and we look at things like call to sale ratio, we've got 57 to 71. Okay, so BB needs to make 71 calls to be able to make the same number of deals, or 71 calls to make a deal versus 57 there. So you've got areas there that once you've identified those things, you can work with the individual. So what does this say about BB is maybe we can work on that call script, right? His BD call ratio to sale, right, is 21 versus JM, which is, here we go, 22. So they're actually very similar. New meeting to sale ratio, follow-up meeting to sale ratio is 4.3. Oh, we've got them exactly the same. This is a terrible example. But what we'll find is when you have somebody that has got really, really strong ethics when it comes to making those calls, they just may be crap with their scripting, with the way that they are building resonance with that person that they're speaking to, and they're having to work a hell of a lot harder and make a hell of a lot more calls. Or if they're doing it via email, if they're having to send out a heap more prospecting emails to be able to get that phone call, to get that initial meeting, versus somebody else who doesn't have to work so hard on the call, but then they may go, because they're like great at selling on the call, they may go too hard in the meetings, and you'll find that their meeting to sale ratio is a lot worse. And you've got all of those different levers to pull with. So there we are, I'm back. Really, really simple stuff. It takes some work getting these things set up, but what you can end up do with, I've just literally created a dummy sheet here that shows you how you can actually manage those pipelines, where this is in HubSpot, and with HubSpot you can do all sorts of different things. I've just created 3 deals in here. All of them are worth $10,000 at different stages. So this particular one is a new lead called. Okay, so that I've made that new call. It's only got a 10% close ratio. So the forecast, it's only worth about $1,000. I've actually got a follow-up meeting scheduled with this client, which is another $10,000 deal, but I know that 40% of those follow-up meetings end up as actual closed deals. So really, really simple. The next $10,000 deal that I've got, all right, I've got a verbal, nothing means, there's no deal is done until you've got that signed contract on your desk. So when you have that $10,000 deal, you've got an 80% weighting to it. You can really, really simply look at your pipeline. So you're a salesperson, or you might look at those 3 deals that you've got in your system and go, I've got 30 grand worth of deals out there. Well, no, you've actually got 13,000 worth of deals out there based on the metrics that you know around your close ratios within the business. And setting those sorts of things up in HubSpot, and there is a ton of different CRMs that you can use to manage these things. And if you've got a team, and even if it's a team of one that's not you, even if it is you, I highly recommend you doing it, whether it's HubSpot, whether it's Insightly, whether it's any CRM system. Managing this deal flow is absolutely critical to improving your sales in your business and maximizing the return that you're getting in regards to the time that you're investing. It takes a little bit of time to set it up, but when you do it properly, the CRM actually drives you rather than it being a noose around your neck for you to fill in. And you can go into here and you can create all of these things, right? So I've got a new lead called 10%. It's worth 10%. Follow-up calls have been made. Discovery meeting scheduled. It's got a weighting of 20%. So if that deal is in the pipeline and I've got a discovery meeting scheduled, I know that with that particular type of client, the average deal is worth X, right? Bang it in there. And we know that this is what the pipeline is looking like. I've got the discovery meeting held, all right? Then it's up to 30%. I've created the quote or the proposal. We've, scheduled the follow-up meeting. I've held the follow-up meeting. We've sat down with them and presented the quote. I've got the verbal, and I've won it or I've lost it. It is so simple to implement these sorts of processes within your business. There are so many tools out there. I've always been a big fan of HubSpot, whether it's the paid or the free CRM. The free CRM is just a brilliant tool to work with, and you can so simply and eloquently manage that entire sales process and drive your activity by using that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to harp on about those sorts of things, and I'm not in here to do a pitch fest. I really just want you to take out of this and connect those dots around you can only manage what you measure. And when you break down your sales process into manageable chunks and you can measure each of those points along the way, it is such a simple process to then turn around, create this sort of measurement tool that you can then use it to gain insights in regards to whether it's your own or your sales team's performance so that you can empower them to do a better job in those areas where they're falling short. And trust me, when you invest that time and that effort in them, it gets repaid massively, right? Because you are actually taking the time to make them better at what they do. It's not about sticks. It's not about waving the stick. And this is something that you will find that some salespeople have challenges with. They're like, oh my God, they're wanting us to measure everything, right? This is becoming a dictatorship. They want to know, they've got no trust. Well, it's not about trust, right? I'm trusting you to do your job. I'm paying you to do your job. What I'm actually doing is trying to get a better understanding of where we can support you better, because as much as you might be full of confidence, there are all sorts of things that when we put these measurements in place, we can identify that we can put into place to support you as a salesperson and help you earn more money. It's as simple as that. And once we get over that initial hurdle, man, how good is a salesperson when they are on fire and closing deals? And when you can get them into that space, it's a great place to be, because positivity just flows through the business and it's so much more fun. So that's me. That's me connecting the dots today. Put measurements in place. Those KPIs for those salespeople are absolutely critically important, including yourself. Turn those into monthly and quarterly meetings. Once you've had those monthly and quarterly performance meetings, then you can put support plans in place to empower them to be even better than what they are. And you will find that you start getting that massive growth because everyone is on song, everyone is aligned, and everyone is kicking freaking ass. That's me for today. You guys have an awesome one.